Hello, everyone. Quality inclusive education is a right in the majority of countries around the world. However, it still remains a vision for most. We all need to make a stand to make this vision a reality. Whether a person with Down syndrome, a family member, an education professional, an advocacy organization, or any other type of key stakeholder. There are three inspirational presenters in this keynote speech who all share a passion and a belief in inclusive education. These speakers will present the vision for inclusive education, discussing why it is so important, the barriers people with Down syndrome face in education, and what is being done by advocates and organizations like Down Syndrome International and Inclusion International to deliver long-term positive change. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sue Swenson. I'm president of Inclusion International. Today I want to tell you why I care about inclusive education. Our middle son Charlie was born in 1982 with profound and multiple disabilities. He never spoke a word or took a step. He had a lot of autistic tendencies and no clear diagnosis. We were lucky that Charlie was born 7 years after the Education for All Handicapped Children Act passed Congress in 1975. Giving every disabled child in the United States a right to a free, appropriate public education. The law is now known as IDEA. Before we had that right, many children like Charlie grew up in institutions because their families were overwhelmed with care and their doctors and experts recommended institutionalization. Sometimes that's all that was available. Many children like Charlie also grew up isolated and hidden inside their family home. Instead, Charlie lived with us at home and went to school at the same schools his brothers attended. Being included is the only thing that mattered to Charlie. He learned to be himself with other people. He learned to get along and to have friends. This is a major accomplishment for any person as disabled as he was. I know in my heart that disabled people and their families belong in our societies just like everyone else with equal rights. Charlie's education was not perfect, far from it. But when Charlie died at age 30, I knew he had lived a real life, his own life. He had many friends. He was happy. Today, I want to speak to you not just as Charlie's mother, but as president of Inclusion International. We are the international network of persons with disabilities, with intellectual disabilities, and their families advocating for our human rights together worldwide. We have 200 members in 115 countries in 5 regions. We support our members' advocacy for inclusive education. So to do that, we created the Catalyst for Inclusive Education. Working with our members, our regional response teams, and expert advisors, the Catalyst is a knowledge-sharing network. Catalyst work may include providing training materials, organizing study tours, conducting research, reviewing policy and legislation, supporting litigation, conducting situational analyses, helping to develop plans and strategies, providing access to development programs, human resources and networks, and providing ongoing mentoring. You are welcome to look at our website to learn more. We are www.inclusion-international.org. This year, our members have developed new position statements on inclusive education. Here's what we have to say. Inclusive education is important because it ensures that people with disabilities have opportunities to learn, participate, and develop. Inclusive education leads to persons with disabilities being contributing and valued citizens. Inclusive education helps to build fair societies where differences are valued, celebrated, and supported. People with intellectual disabilities have a right to be included in education systems and settings that are inclusive of all. Our members believe the right to inclusive education means that all students, including students with intellectual disabilities, are taught in schools where they learn together with students with and without disabilities in the same class. Receive a good, quality, inclusive education, are accepted, valued, and feel like they belong at school, are safe from abuse, seclusion, and restraint at school, have the same academic, social, and extracurricular opportunities as all other students, and do not experience discrimination, exclusion, or segregation. We believe we should all aim for inclusive education systems that have non-rejection policies so no student can be prevented from going to local schools. Also, the system should be designed to include and support the learning, dignity, ability, and potential of all learners, no matter their background, gender, or disability. The systems should train, empower, support, and prepare teachers, administrators, and education staff to teach all students in ways which best meet their learning styles in inclusive classrooms. We should value, listen to, and learn from people with intellectual disabilities and their families. We should provide care, support, and other accommodations that are needed to make sure students with intellectual disabilities are safe in our schools. We should apply universal design for learning, a way of thinking about teaching and learning which makes it possible for students to learn in different ways, giving all students an equal opportunity to succeed. We should stop teaching students in separate classrooms, separate schools, or groups based on their disability, their diagnosis, their achievements at school, or any other label. Children should not be taught in special schools or classes. This is against the right to inclusive education. It leads to discrimination in the education system and in society. We should stop charging families fees for the education of children with disabilities when education is free to all others. Parents should not have to pay for support or assistance so that their children can go to school. We should design schools to be inclusive of everyone from the start. Families should not have to advocate or negotiate for each child. Inclusion should be the normal way of education. We should raise awareness of the importance of inclusive education among families, school administrators, teachers, and society. We should monitor inclusive education on a regular basis and make sure families are involved in this process. We should make sure that segregation is not happening either formally or informally. Together with Down Syndrome International, we can make this a better world. We welcome you to our website, www.inclusion-international.org, to learn more about our work. I wish you all a wonderful and very productive meeting. Thank you.
Hola, bienvenidos a este primer Congreso Mundial Virtual de Síndrome Down. Mi nombre es Ximena Rodríguez. Tengo 22 años y ahora voy a compartir mi presentación. Soy actriz, me gusta el modelaje y me gusta el baile. Soy embajadora de Down Syndrome International por Perú, mi país, y soy autogestora por mi organización, la Sociedad Peruana de Síndrome de Down. Hoy voy a hablarles de mi experiencia en educación inclusiva como de eso que se viene trabajando en mi país. Las escuelas de grado inicial son hoy día más abiertas a incluir a todos los estudiantes. Y yo participaba en todas las actividades. Pero después de eso fui a varias escuelas primarias particulares porque no era fácil que los colegios nos dejaran estar ahí y entendieran nuestras necesidades. Finalmente mis padres encontraron una escuela que estaba dispuesta a trabajar con personas con discapacidad, incluidos en el aula, y yo complementé ahí mi educación básica. El apoyo familiar es muy importante durante la etapa escolar. Yo estuve feliz la mayor parte del tiempo y ahí tuve amigos y compartí muchas actividades. Pero en la secundaria noté que tenía menos amigos cercanos y que ya no me imitaban. Mi profesora de apoyo me ayudó con eso. Participé en actividades deportivas, actividades extracurriculares, actividades fuera del colegio. Nunca supe que mis padres tenían que pagar una pensión extra para que yo tuviera una maestra de apoyo dentro del salón. Y mi otro compañero con síndrome Down tenía también su profesora pagada. Finalmente me gradué de la secundaria y tuve mi fiesta de promoción como cualquier persona. Ahora trabajo como autogestora y ayudo a otras personas a tener un tipo distinto de educación inclusiva. Hablo con otros profesores sobre cómo nosotros aprendemos y lo que necesitamos. Hablo con padres para que entiendan que nosotros nos vamos a afectar el aprendizaje de sus hijos. Hablo con los directores sobre distintos métodos como el diseño universal para el aprendizaje que hace que los profesores diseñen material que sirve para todos. Hablo con estudiantes para hacerles entender cómo nos sentimos cuando somos discriminados y que somos personas que también tienen sus sueños y temores como ellos. El COVID-19 ha impactado la educación inclusiva y los estudiantes han tenido que aprender sin contacto físico y sin el apoyo que necesitaban. Y ahora voy a dejar de compartir mi pantalla para hablar mis reflexiones finales. Necesitamos que nuestros gobiernos mejoren la educación inclusiva cuando volvamos al colegio. Necesitamos en los colegios nacionales cambien su idea de inclusión, porque ellos tienen demasiados alumnos y los profesores no pueden saber qué cosas necesitan las personas con síndrome de Down. Muchos papás no pueden pagar la pensión de un colegio privado Creo que no deben crear nuevos colegios especiales solo para personas con discapacidad, porque en esos colegios no podemos interactuar con los demás y ellos no pueden conocernos más. Después, creer que somos niños eternos y angelitos. Los maestros necesitan entender que tenemos un ritmo diferente, así que quizás necesitemos un poco más de tiempo. No deben exigir profesores de apoyo, solo para las personas con discapacidad pagadas por los padres. El colegio debe encargarse de la inclusión, pero dentro de clase yo tenía mi propia profesora, mi propio material adaptado, y a veces de mis compañeros se preguntaban por qué yo tenía diferente material. Todas las personas tienen derecho a una educación inclusiva en el mismo colegio, aprendiendo los mismos contenidos, el lenguaje sencillo con los demás. Tienen el derecho de ser parte de todas las actividades. Las escuelas necesitan prepararse para hacer cosas que sirvan para todos y no usar excusas de falta de preparación para evitar que nosotros seamos sus estudiantes, para que no se queden atrás, como dice el objetivo de desarrollo sostenible. Número 4, educación para todos. Gracias.
Hello, everyone. It's an honour for me to join this keynote panel and to be with my colleagues Sue Swenson and Ximena Rodríguez. We've worked together before, and wouldn't it be lovely if we could all be in the same place? But at least virtually, we're able to contribute to this important conversation about inclusive education. I'm Rhonda Faragher, and I'm the Vice President of Down Syndrome International. I'm also on staff at the School of Education at the University of Queensland, where I'm the Director of the Down Syndrome Research Program. And I'm really interested in inclusive education, why it is so effective for our learners with Down syndrome, and how to do it better. So in our presentation, my part of it, I'll focus on why Down Syndrome International is particularly interested in inclusive education, how we're supporting our members, our plans for the future, and an invitation for you. So look out for that towards the end. When we think about why, we've already heard from two speakers who've given us a good overview of why it's so important, and the evidence is clear. Inclusive education is the right approach for learners with Down syndrome, but it's the right approach for all learners. All learners benefit. I think it's really important just to reiterate here, and it's all been part of the presentation so far, that inclusive education means that all students attend and welcome their local education setting. So the text on the slide has been taken from our Down Syndrome International guidelines, which I'll be talking about shortly. It's really important that we recognise inclusive education is not a new term for special education. They're different things. Inclusive education is about the learning of all students, with and without disability. So thinking about why, the evidence is clear, so that's why Down Syndrome International wants to implement the best evidence-based practices, and inclusive education is that. We also want to support our members to implement that best practice and comply with their obligations under the United Nations, such as through the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. How we're going about this, first of all, we developed education guidelines. We're now supporting their implementation, and we're looking at trialling and learning from that implementation. You may well be familiar with the guidelines. They've been downloaded hundreds of times from our website, and there's been a lot of implementation and translation as well into other languages. And there's free download available from our website. We're really delighted in the uptake of these guidelines, and that's no small measure due to the contributions of our member community and the wider global community. We had tremendous feedback on our draft. We had feedback from organisations around the world and individual members, and through that we got lots of ideas and ways to improve them, and we are very proud of the final version. The guidelines contain three main sections. There's an introduction section. While we're all familiar with Down syndrome in our community, we recognise the guidelines will be read and used by people who may not be as familiar. So we've given some background to Down syndrome. But the three main sections of the guidelines involve leading, teaching, and learning. Leading is absolutely critical. It's an enabler. And the guidelines to support effective leadership, absolutely critical for good inclusive education. Often the focus is on the learner, clearly important, but without good leadership and good teaching, it's not going to happen. So we've got those guidelines around supporting each of those three. Once we published the guidelines, we then held some webinars, and the recordings are available on the Down Syndrome International website. And so you can go back and listen to them where the guidelines are discussed in more detail. The team in the Down Syndrome International office have also developed some really helpful toolkits, such as how to do a translation. We're not experts in the world's languages, but people in our community clearly are. But to be able to make an official translation, there's a toolkit to provide advice about how to do that. The guidelines are available for free download, but they can't be altered except with approval. So to translate into another language, please contact the office, have a look at the toolkit, and that'd be terrific. And so we've already got two done, and they're on the website. You can sign up through the Down Syndrome International office to access the toolkits for that one and others as well. We're also in the process of trialling implementation. We've got funding, we're delighted to have, to work with the Down Syndrome Association in the UK. And in this project, we'll be working with stakeholders, and they include people with Down syndrome, really important, their families, education professionals, and policymakers. These stakeholders are going to be provided with training and materials to help them in their own advocacy campaigns. Then we'll be conducting research on system-level changes to the UK education system and looking at the current policies in place around implementing inclusive education. There will also be provision of content and materials for the teacher training program, so helping teachers in that professional development and professional learning that they undertake. So this project is funded for 12 months, but it won't stop there. What we learn from that, we hope to be able to share with our colleagues in other countries around the world. How else are we working? Well, we're very proud and we really are grateful for our collaboration with the International Disability Alliance. So we have been supporting and working with them on the development of some reports, and one of them is the Inclusive Education Global Report. It's available from free download from their website, the International Disability Alliance.org. They've also recently been working on a technical report around universal design for learning. Universal design for learning is this idea that within your general planning of a lesson, you build in as many ways as possible to take part in that lesson, to access the material, show what you've learnt, to be able to be involved in every part of a lesson. That helps to minimise adjustments that you have to make as an additional part of planning. It's a really powerful approach. The documents available, again, free download from the IDA website. So our future plans, we are wanting to understand the process of long-term systemic change. So that's that really critical implementation study that's underway at the moment. And we'll be building recommendations for that. So I promised you an invitation. The guidelines are free to download. We would love you to do that. We also invite you to engage with Down Syndrome International members around the world to share your experiences, because that's how we all learn. So you're welcome, please, to join us. And there's the website there. And so at the end of my presentation, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this. And thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of this wonderful Congress.